Welcome to Channel AMAC, your insight to the Australian visa system. Good day everyone, my name is Carl Young, your online YouTube visa consultant. Now today's video I would like to do a comparison of all the business, innovation and investment visas throughout the three biggest cities of Australia, which is going to be Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. Obviously they are represented by their state of New South Wales, Victoria and also Queensland. Now because there has been so many differences coming of the last 2 years and the changes in the coming 2 years, the different state does provide different kind of criteria for business investment visas now. So a lot of people got really confused, and they generally looking into the Australian immigration's website, but that only provides the minimal requirement and the criteria for a visa applicant, and above that there is still a state requirement as well. So today I'd like to take this opportunity, and in this video I hope that all the viewers will actually learn and knowing that which state will be more preferential for your choices of business innovations. So let's take a look. Let's go to Queensland first. Okay, now so Queensland generally we go to, they refer to BSMQ, so they are actually named by Business Skill Migration Queensland, Australia. So they are couple category that we're gonna look for is gonna be the 188A, 188B, and 132A, and they are if you don't understand what they stand for, you can actually find out on the playlist of business innovation and investment visa, a playlist which we have on this channel. You can go through them one by one. So let's take a look at what Queensland offers. So the first of all that we are looking into the business innovation and investor visa category, which is right underneath down here. You can see that all this content down here, and you can also type in BSMQ 188 in Google and you actually land yourself in this page here. So let me just adjust the web page to, so that's in right in the middle. So as you can see, for this, Queensland does offer a very good opportunity for business investors. So in order to get into business innovation, what you need to do, you need to have a personal business net asset of at least 800,000 and transferable within the 2 years once you get the visa. And all you need to do is make an investment at least 200,000. That's actually very minimal, and actually meets the minimal requirements of the immigration and regulations. So, and they do have some restrictions here. So entry level retail, convenience store, cafe, restaurant are only accepted if you go to regional Queensland. Okay, so if you're in the CBD area like Brisbane itself, suburban area, no, that's not going to be accepted. And generally importing business is not accepted as well, and property development will not be accepted as well. That generally refers to buying an old block of land, not the big one, but and you subdivide it into 2 or 3 and then construct it or sell. Now that cannot be accepted no more. Okay, now looking into the investor part. So bear in mind, we're not going to talk about significant investors because that's not much of differences between the cities and the states. Now, investors stream generally refers to purchasing and investing into government bond, as you know. So it still stays with the minimum requirement of immigration needs. So you need to have a net business and personal asset of $2.25 million, and that has to be shown structurally, procedure-wise, has to be shown at least holding of at least 3 years at the time of lodgement. And you need to invest the designated investments of at least $1.5 million to the Queensland Treasury bond. So that is meeting the minimum requirement as well. Obviously, you go living in Queensland too, so that's not too hard, and that basically sits at the minimum requirement and criteria within the immigration regulations there. Now going into the 132, let's have a look. Now the criteria seems to be meeting right down here in the middle. Seems to be meeting in with the immigration's basis requirements as well. So basically, you need to have asset of $1.5 million. So that's less than one AA-B, to be honest. And you need to be transferable in 2 years after you get the visa. And minimum 1 million into investment in business, and the other $500,000 to settlement costs, and that's basically it. Now they do have a restriction on property development as well. You need to have the relevant background, and you need to intend to establish business development in Queensland. Total asset transferable investment must be higher than the entry level. So if you want to do a property development with 132A visas, I would suggest that at least 2 to 3 million will be acceptable by the state of Queensland. Okay, so project needs to be large-scale ongoing business. So you cannot just be very basic subdivisions. Again, now generally importing business that will not be acceptable. So it has to be innovative, advanced technology, currently non-valuable, usually value-added service imported products. So again, cannot just be something like, you know, a lot of people import lighters and matches, sunglasses, you know, all these tourist side, they sell those what should I say, a cheap kind of products and goods that cannot be accepted no more. So that's Queensland for you. Let's move on to Victoria. Now, at the end of this video, I'll do a summarize for people to actually, for you to actually make your preferential choices here. Now, for Victoria, now every state's web page is a little bit different. So let me adjust the web page so everything's in the middle. Okay, now let's go down. This is 1AA, which is business innovation stream. And let's have a look what the Victoria actually offered. Now, the cool thing here is that they have raised the minimum score to be at least 80 points. So if you do know about 1AA visas, your minimum requirements to make 65 points within that score point test score tables. Now they need 80s now. So 80s basically meant you need to have an asset of at least $2.25 million, and your business experiences is exceeding possibly 7 years. So you can actually meet those kind of criteria, and there's a lot more required. You cannot do these. You can do anything but these. You cannot do small scale property development. Now that's the same as Queensland. Small scale freight forwarding, that's the same as Queensland. There's two more is that record. Now Queensland cannot accept passive investment as well. Bear in mind, passive investment by law within immigration regulations, it cannot be accepted at all. So Queensland BSMQ did not even mention the website because immigration won't accept it anyhow. Now Victoria does restrict another thing, is the commodity and scrap metal export. I guess there has been a lot of resources in business and services in that area, so they are not allowing anyone to take on that kind of business anymore. Export business now, they're giving more specific requirements. So export Victoria goods, you cannot, there has been people taking red wines from South Australia and shipped it to Melbourne and then exported from the Port of Phillip. So that cannot be accepted no more. You need to have the job creation, and you need to have the benefit to the economy of the state of Victoria, and obviously addressing market gaps, expansion. So again, if you want to export stuff, it's not that simple no more. You have to you need to create an actual business there rather than just moving into something that's already exists there. That's another phrase that you use. Okay, so that's basically what they meant. And you need to have a benefit to Victoria. You need to employ an Australian citizen or Australian permanent resident unrelated to you for at least 12 months. And that's an additional requirement. Now the work hours has to be 30 hours per week. So that's additional. And that's all additional to what Queensland actually offers. Now, Queensland does not require that, and you need to have sufficient fund. So remember in Queensland they only require investment of 200,000. There's no other requirement additional to that. So Victoria requires you to have 400k available business activity invested into business activity, and another 200,000 for settlement. So that's a total of $600,000, and that's 3 times more than what Queensland's requires. So that's basically what Victoria's 1AA requires. Now moving to 1AA. Now again, I think the only differences here compared to Queensland with the basic requirement is that obviously you need to have 1.5 designated investment into Victorian Treasury Corporation, which is the bond again. Now, addition to that, you need to have another $500,000 invested into another Victorian business. Now, and that's a bit hard. I mean, that's like doing the 1AA and then doing the B together. So why would you do that? I mean, if you're gonna spend another 500,000, why don't we just go back to 1AA? Well, probably it's gonna be less requirement than looking at all these. You probably can do something like that. There's no requirements here, but again, you actually spend more money, so that's $2 million there. Now moving into Victorian's 132 visas, let's have a look. From what I know and noticing, I'm not gonna go into very fine detail there. Obviously, you need to have business in Victoria, job creation, increased competitiveness, import replacement, blah blah blah. That's all pretty general, because if you want to do a business plan, that's all required to be embedded in there. Now, obviously, they are these are excluded of passive investment. You cannot do it. You cannot just buy apartment units and rent it out and making rental for what you know as an income. General importing cannot be do it. You can't do commodity and scrap metal. Small scale fry and project based property development cannot be smaller project based property development cannot be accepted as well. So that's basically matching with what 1AA requires. Now the capital investments has to be at least $2 million. So looking at this, your spending probably your investment amount is exactly the same as 1AA-B. Now, the only advantage of 132A is that you get permanent residency straight away, and there's no living requirements. You get permanent residency straight away. And they need to have a fine detailed business proposals. So these has to be looking into, but I don't think it's gonna be too hard in to getting these done. But obviously the requirement is much higher now. Okay, now moving into New South Wales. So Sydney, if you're interested in Sydney, there it is. Now the New South Wales. Now what they do is they don't have actual web page, but they do have these nomination criteria. So once you click on it, you go into these PDF forms. So let's have a look into 1AA first. Now obviously all of the 1AA and B had to be less than 55 years old. 132 is as well, but there is a waiver provision. That's only if you can invest possibly double of the state requirement, then they will sign it and waive it for you. Okay, now business turnover. Now you need to you need to get that business ownership of 1 or 2 businesses in an annual total of over $1 million. Okay, that's that's double, not double. The minimum requirement 400k once you want to turn the into AAA visas. But now they want $1 million if you have business in Sydney. If it's going to be regional, then half of that is required. Now net personal and business assets in Sydney, they need 1.3 million, and regional in 800k. So the differences between this one and the compared to Queensland one, Queensland all around require 800k, but Sydney wants a lot more, $1.3 million. So, and there's not much of additional detail, as you can see, in compared to Victoria by means proposed Now, business investments, you commitment must have 500,000, regional 300,000. That looks like it's much better than Victoria, though. If we choosing 1AA, and business investment must be in property, plant, equipment, investment. Definitely should apply. So they do have a regions differences. Unlike in Victoria, they basically across the whole state. And the New South Wales and Queensland does provide, a point where if you go to regional or you stay in the city, it's different. Qualifying ownership interest, so obviously turnover 500,000. So it looks like it's much better in compared to the Victorian one. Now, if you're not engaged in business where professional technical or trade services mark up almost 50% of your time. So again, that's matching with the immigration's needs, immigration law anyway. Now looking into 1AA-B, let's magnify that a bit. You need to have successful business investment career. That's pretty usual. Now going into treasury bond. Now, New South Wales, if you want to stay in regional New South Wales, you need to put at least $2.25 million. And if you're gonna go in Sydney, that's gonna be $3 million. So that's double of the minimum requirement and double of what you require to go to Brisbane. And that's the big differences here. That's the biggest differences here, and all the other one shall stay the same. Okay, it doesn't have much of differences here. So the requirement in the state is basically double. Okay, now going into 132A, let's have a look. Now, if you're gonna go in Sydney, double again. Go to regional in New South Wales, it's $2 million. So that's the basic differences between New South Wales, Victoria, and Queensland. So, and the reason I choose these one because they are the most chosen cities or states that the business investors, migrants actually go to. So let's summarize that. Basically, Queensland and Brisbane, or in Gold Coast actually offers the lowest minimal requirement, and I think that's the reason why every time you see that Queensland has the they closes nominations faster and sooner than any other state, because they are actually offering the most what should I say, not the cheapest, but the minimal investments requirements and criteria. And moving on to New South Wales and Victoria, it seems to be Victoria is actually the criteria is much more harder than New South Wales, because they not just for the amount of investment, but the requirement of business plan and the fine details they need to demonstrate. The investment migrants required to demonstrate more for Victoria. I think the reason is for the past 20 years there has been too many more. In fact, that more than 50% or maybe possibly 60% of the business migrant in the past 20 years goes to Victoria and Melbourne. That's why Melbourne's population has grown so much, and they're actually meeting up with what Sydney is actually catching up with Sydney now. So I think that's probably why they are putting the requirement much higher. Now, New South Wales, in the other hand, you do require to invest higher, but then the requirement of fine detail is much less than required in Victoria. Anyway, that's for the video today. If you do have any other questions, if you have, more than happy to leave a comment down below. I'm happy to respond to you in timely manner, and consider to subscribe to our channel, so once we have more and new updates, you should be the first one getting our insight of the Australian visas. Thank you for watching. I see you in the next video. Goodbye.